Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. It's a beautiful day to work some sublimation magic. Have you ever made a mistake sublimating a tumbler? Me too. We all have, but don't write it off just yet. And definitely don't throw it away. Instead, I'll show you how to transform your messed up tumbler into something new and beautiful in this video. You probably know by now that all kinds of things can go wrong when you're sublimating. Sure, it produces beautiful and amazing results too, but let's be real. We've all had our share of missteps when working with sublimation. And when you consider the time and the money spent on sublimation projects, ruining a tumbler with a poorly positioned transfer, a ghosted design, the wrong color profile, or a messy seam can make you want to give up on sublimating altogether. But please don't give up. Did you know that with the right technique, there's a pretty good chance that you can actually remove much of the sublimation design from your tumbler? Really, I'm serious, you can. Well, not every sublimation blank can be reused, and your results may vary depending on the original design. It's definitely worth a try, especially for a tumbler that you'd otherwise not use, like this one that I put on backwards. Like I forgot to mirror it, right? Now, we all know that crafting produces some waste, unfortunately, and it's often unavoidable. But when possible, I try to repurpose anything I can, and I encourage you to also. So, today I'll show you two different methods for removing sublimation ink from a tumbler, and I'll share all of my tips to help your project rise from the ashes too, with one of these stunning new Phoenix designs that I made with AI art technology and Photoshop. To re-sublimate a tumbler, you're going to need a design dark enough to cover most of the mistakes that might not lighten all the way to white. And I'm going to tell you how you can lighten your projects. And these designs are perfect for that. You can use mine or your own, but you do want dark designs for this technique. I'll show you how to get my designs later, but first, let's talk about the standard supplies for sublimating a tumbler real quick. So you need a dedicated convection oven. You don't want to use your kitchen oven, right? You need some blowout paper, sublimation printer, and the paper, the usual things. And if you need a refresher on sublimation, you'll find an in-depth video over at jennifermaker.com/sublimation for beginners. You'll also need a heat gun, like this one, for lifting the ink from smaller areas, and a silicone mat for a really important safety measure I'll show you in a moment. All the tools and materials for this technique are listed below this video and in the tutorial over at jennifermaker.com/507. One more thing that you'll need is some time. How much time depends on a lot of factors, but you need to expect the Un-Sublimation process to take anywhere from an hour to even 4 hours. Yes, I said 4 hours. This is not a quick process. But if you're ready to try it, let's remove some sublimation ink from your tumbler and give it some new life. I'll show you the two approaches I tested, and then I will reveal which one I loved and which one I would not recommend. So let's get started. Step 1. Get my free Re-Sublimation designs. Download my Phoenix sublimation designs at jennifermaker.com/507. You can either download them right from that link by saving the project, or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for Libraries in the red bar at the top, and then click either Get a Password if you don't yet have one, or click Enter the library. Search the page for design number 507 and click the link to download the designs. Unzip the file, and in the folder you'll find a PNG folder with 3 Phoenix designs. These are perfect for re-sublimating a tumbler because they're dark and will nicely cover any ink left behind from your previous sublimation design. If you want to use something else, look for dark sublimation images or create your own with AI art using my AI art workshop. You can get details on that over at jennifermaker.com/AI-art. I'm going to show you how to do this technique with the free designs I provided for this tutorial. So pick your favorite, then prepare and print it with your sublimation printer. If you're not sure how to do this, check out my helpful tutorial at jennifermaker.com/sublimation print method. If you need any help figuring out what size to print your sublimation design, be sure to watch my easy sublimation tumbler tutorial at jennifermaker.com/404. If you're using a tapered tumbler rather than a straight-sided tumbler, my How to Sublimate Tapered Tumblers tutorial has some helpful tips that you'll want to know too. You can find that over at jennifermaker.com/501. Step 2, remove the sublimation ink from your tumbler. Before you begin unsublimating your tumbler, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area with a fan or even completely outside. This process produces a lot of fumes, which are unsafe for you, your family, and your pets to breathe in. Remember, safety first. These are a couple of tumblers that didn't quite turn out the way I wanted. Remember, mistakes can happen to all of us. That's just the nature of crafting, especially with sublimation. Option number 1, use a heat gun. For our first test, we'll try out a heat gun. If your tumbler has one small mistake like this white spot here above the words, this is a great method to try. Now, it does require some important safety measures, though. The fumes will be extra strong when you're unsublimating your tumbler using a heat gun, so be sure you set up an area to do this outside. Put on your heat-resistant gloves, then place the tumbler on a heat-safe surface like a Cricut Easy Press mat. Start by turning the heat gun on its lowest temperature setting and keep it at least 1/4 of an inch away from the tumbler and keep the heat moving over the surface. If the ink doesn't start lightening after a few minutes, try turning the heat gun up to the next highest temperature setting. Apply heat to your tumbler in the area that you'd like to correct or sublimate over. Once the area you'd like to remove has lightened as much as possible, allow the tumbler to cool on your heat-resistant surface for at least 20 minutes before touching it again. While this method can be effective for covering small mistakes or doing spot corrections on your sublimated tumbler's design, it would take quite some time to remove the whole design this way. So if you want to remove the whole design, try my next method. Option number 2, use a convection oven. Some tumblers end up with more mistakes, and they have better results re-sublimating if the entire design is lightened. So preheat your convection oven to 385 degrees Fahrenheit or 196 degrees Celsius. Now, these small convection ovens can sometimes be off on their temperatures, so use an oven thermometer placed in the center for an accurate reading. Next, use rubbing alcohol and a lint-free cloth to clean dust, debris, or fingerprints off your tumbler. Now, we need to protect the inside of the cup from ink vapor too. I got this idea from Daniel and Jay-Z over at Just Might DIY. Cut a square from a silicone mat just big enough to fully cover the cup's opening. You may be wondering why we don't do this when we sublimate blank tumblers. And that's because, in this case, we're releasing the ink that's on the tumbler instead of just transferring ink to a tumbler. That sublimation ink we release is going to go somewhere, and we don't want it to go into our tumbler, where it could be reactivated with a particularly hot drink. So we cover it to protect it. Use the cup mat to cover the cup's opening so the ink won't settle inside when it's sublimating in the oven. Without this step, the cup won't be safe to drink from. Once your convection oven has come up to temperature, put on your heat-resistant gloves. Then carefully place the tumbler in the center of the oven. Close the oven to begin the transformation. After 15 minutes, with your heat-resistant gloves on, rotate the tumbler 180 degrees. Be sure to keep the silicone square covering the opening. And depending on your project, the ink could take more than an hour to fade. Every 15 minutes, put on your gloves to check the progress and rotate the tumbler 180 degrees. This will make sure that all parts of the tumbler are heated equally and evenly. After the fourth 15-minute cycle, the ink should be significantly lighter. If the ink has released in some places more than others, return the tumbler to the convection oven. Check it and rotate it every 15 minutes until it's more evened out. My tumbler took about 4 hours to lighten to this state. Yes, I said 4 hours, but yours might take more or less time depending on the tumbler and the design. However long yours takes, remember to be patient and rotate the tumbler often. Once the ink is lifted evenly and isn't getting any lighter, set a pressing mat or another heat-resistant surface near the oven. Carefully remove the super hot tumbler using your heat-resistant gloves and let it cool on that safe surface for at least 40 minutes. Don't touch it without gloves before then. And remember to turn off your oven too. While some of the original design still remains on the tumbler, yes, it is now light enough to sublimate over with a darker design, like our Phoenix. I found that the convection oven method produced the most consistent results and probably in less time. Really, less time. Just be absolutely sure that you are in a well-ventilated area outside when you do this. Now that we've removed as much ink as possible from our tumblers, we're ready to sublimate over them. Step 3, re-sublimate your tumbler. Remember to keep up your good ventilation, and then depending on your tumbler shape, you can use the steps from my skinny tumbler tutorial or my tapered tumbler tutorial to re-sublimate. I've linked to both on my blog post about removing the sublimation ink at jennifermaker.com/507. So you'll want to preheat your dedicated convection oven to 385 degrees Fahrenheit or 196 degrees Celsius. Use a flexible measuring tape to measure the tumbler from top to bottom and get the circumference. And get your printed sublimation design and a paper trimmer and some scissors. Trim the top and bottom edges of the design right on the edge of the printed area. Then trim the left edge so there's just about a 1/4 inch strip of white left next to the design. Place the print face up on your work surface. Then place the tumbler on top with the open edge of the cup facing away from you. See where certain areas didn't lift as well as other ones? Let's orient the tumbler so the darkest parts of the wrap will cover that residual ink. Now wrap it tightly around the tumbler, as tightly as you can. Where the edges overlap, make sure the end with the white is showing on the outside of your wrap. Check that the top and bottom edges of the design are even on your tumbler, and make sure that the cup is completely covered all the way around. Holding the bottom edge of the wrap securely to the tumbler, add a piece of tape to the middle of the free end with the white edge. Then, holding the wrap tight to the tumbler, pull the loose side with the tape as tight as possible around it, then press the tape in place on the lower layer. Add 2 more pieces of tape above and below the first piece. Add more tape perpendicularly, making sure the entire seam is covered. Now add some tape to cover the topmost part of the seam, with some extending past the edge. With your thumb on the bottom part of the tape, use your other hand to pull it tightly over the edge, then press it down inside the tumbler. Repeat for the bottom part of the tumbler too, securing the paper and tape to the bottom of the tumbler. Continue to tape all along the top and bottom seams. Now feel for the edge of the paper underneath the seam. Use your small scraper tool or your fingernail to press along that line, so the paper is completely touching every bit of the tumbler. This may seem like a small step, but it's the best way to get the ink to transfer with a less obvious seam. Continue to use your scraper to burnish the tape around the top edge of the tumbler too. This is to get any air pockets out which may interfere with your sublimation. Then do the same on the bottom. Cut a sheet of butcher paper big enough to wrap around your tumbler, then tape it around the outside of the cup the same way you did with the printed wrap. And now it's time to add your last layer to your tumbler. I really like to use these thick silicone bands to hold the wrap in place. Slide the bands onto your tumbler, and for the best results, be sure to space them out evenly. Make sure that your top and bottom-most bands are as close to the edges as possible. And if you don't want to use the silicone bands, you can also use shrink wrap tubes or a silicone sleeve. Instead of silicone bands, you can also use shrink wrap tubes. Your shrink wrap tube should be the right size to easily fit the widest part of your tumbler. Insert the tumbler into the tube, then put on your heat-resistant gloves and use a heat gun to slowly heat the wrap so it conforms to the tumbler and wrinkles smooth out. Don't make it too tight though, or it will pull apart in the oven. Another option is to use a silicone sleeve. You can make it tighter by pulling in the edge pieces. It's pretty easy to use and locks with a click. When your convection oven is up to the right temperature, place the prepared tumbler in the center of the oven and set a timer for 6 minutes. At the 3-minute mark, put your heat-resistant gloves on and rotate the tumbler 180 degrees. This helps to evenly sublimate it. After your 6-minute timer is up, put your heat-resistant gloves back on and remove the tumbler from the oven. Set the tumbler down on a heat-safe surface like a pressing mat and leave it to cool for at least 40 minutes. Then remove the tape, butcher paper, and sublimation paper to reveal your reimagined and re-sublimated tumbler. Step 4. Show it off. Here are all the tumblers that I've saved today with this method. Aren't they beautiful? Now, instead of becoming trash or having unsightly and annoying mistakes on them, our Oops tumblers have risen from the ashes into tumbler phoenixes. Didn't these turn out amazing? I know I always say a cup with a messed up design will hold a drink just fine, but if you want to try a do-over, I highly recommend this method. I have saved so many tumblers this way, and instead of being reminded of the mistake every time I use it, I have this awesome reminder that I can turn mistakes into something really beautiful. And don't forget, you have that superpower too. So what do you do if your original sublimated image just won't lighten, or you're unhappy with the results of your re-sublimated tumbler? Because I know that happens. If that happens to you, you can try redecorating your tumbler in a different way, like coating it in glitter epoxy resin, right? I have a whole tutorial on that over at jennifermaker.com/134. Now, if you do go to the epoxy route, be sure to check my safety tips at jennifermaker.com/epoxy safety. Don't skip these, they're super important. But if epoxy isn't your thing, my best advice would be to cover the mistakes with vinyl, or put the cup in a koozie, or is it cozy? I don't know how to say that word. Or decorate it with stickers and put some pens or Cricut tools in there. There are a lot of ways to repurpose it so it doesn't end up in a landfill. Just be creative. Now, to care for your re-sublimated tumbler and keep it looking its best, I recommend hand washing it with warm water, just like any other sublimated tumbler. They're typically not supposed to go into a dishwasher. You probably can if you really want. But if it gets too hot, it can re-sublimate. So just keep that in mind, right? Everyone's dishwasher is a little different. So the safest thing is hand washing. However, I did find that the coating may be prone to scraping or scratching after it's been re-sublimated. So take a little extra care with these. There's so much to learn about sublimation, I know. So if this got you excited to learn more, come check out my Sublimation Startup mini course over at jennifermaker.com/sublimation startup. I walk you through all the basics from setting up a sublimation printer with the right ink to which tools are helpful for beginners. I also show you how to use the free software to print designs and share all of my tips on getting the best results with each press. Not to mention, I've got tons of ideas and designs for projects that you can sublimate. You can sign up right now and learn at your own pace without any pressure. You'll find all the information over at sublimationstartup.com. I also have a Facebook group just for sublimation, which is a great way to see all of the fun that you can have with it and all of the amazing things that you can make. It is an awesome group filled with really, really good people. And whether you're new to sublimation or not, I invite you to come join us at jennifermaker.com/sublimation group. I'd love to have you come ask questions, share ideas, and get inspired. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.